second achievement in their holy grail was electronic cash. That's really what they wanted. And it was in culture. It was in science fiction in the 80s and 90s. Like Neil Stephenson wrote amazing books about the future, and money actually played often a significant role in his storytelling, the type of monies that would exist, digicash, digibucks, whatever. Then it also was there in business. You had David Chaum, who was a researcher at Berkeley in the 80s. He came up with this idea of like blind signatures for payments, and later turned it into a company called DigiCash, where you would swap your dollars or euros for basically this fully anonymous currency. Now, DigiCash failed because it was centralized. So a lot of these cypherpunks like Adam Back and Nick Szabo and others, and Nick Szabo actually worked at DigiCash. They kind of saw like the promise of DigiCash, and then they saw why it failed, and they were like, okay, so the mint, the thing that creates the money, has to be decentralized. Okay, well, how's that going to work? So it was a tough problem, and it took decades, but eventually Hal Finney had a little bit of a breakthrough in 2004 with his reusable proof of work. And then 2008, we get Satoshi. And, as I write in my book, like Adam Back gets this email, like summer of 2008, this dude named Satoshi or whoever named Satoshi. And they're like, hey, can you look over this thing I'm going to publish? And Adam was like, sure, here's some feedback. And, it's crazy. Adam had such a, he was so built for this career, given his personal history and what he had been through. PhD in distributed systems, and he studied economics, and he came out with Hashcash and thought about this way of tying digital work to real world energy. I mean, he basically pioneered a lot of the stuff that went into Bitcoin. And we talked about that in the book, but essentially, like, this was the big breakthrough. And we have it now. We have digital cash. But the cool part is we have something even better. We have digital gold too. And this relates to the human rights part. But I think Satoshi, again, realized that to make digital cash work, the mint had to be decentralized. So there could be restraints, or there needed to be restraints on monetary production. It couldn't be something that like the group of people could just change. I mean, then you'd be back to just the old way of doing things. Because don't forget, you can censor in two ways. You can censor by freezing or censoring, right? But you can also censor by demonetization or devaluation. You can make the currency worthless. So Bitcoin needed to protect against both of these things. So it's no coincidence that it was released during the great financial crisis, not during some surveillance scandal. And if you look at the Genesis block, obviously, in Bitcoin, it references the bank bailouts in Britain, Chancellor on brink of second bailout of banks. So, people like me believe that Bitcoin was ultimately, look, it was Satoshi stood on the shoulders of giants who were questing for digital cash, right? E-cash that we could use on the internet without government control. But really, I think what they figured out is what was more important was replacing central banking. Okay, so people like me believe that Bitcoin is actually a competitor to central banks, and that it will ultimately be the reserve currency of the world. The cool part is it's not just going to be for governments. Everybody can own it. So it's this like ultimate check on government power. And that's what you observe today when you look around the world and see the tens of millions of people who use Bitcoin in Cuba, in Nigeria, in Argentina, in Iran, in China, wherever. They're able to have a little bit of freedom, regardless of how tyrannical their government is. They're able to take their work and time and energy and turn it into something that can't be stolen or confiscated or debased. And they're able to have the freedom to interact with that currency, their lifeblood, with anyone in the world. And it can't be stopped. And it's just, I think it's remarkable and much needed. And in some ways, again, inevitable, I guess, to close on the question you asked. It's kind of like, the system created Bitcoin because the system was headed in such a repressive direction, and humans are, just very creative. And you see this often in dictatorships. Like dictatorships often lay the groundwork and environment for like very creative art, like amazing art and film come out of repressive conditions. So I think as the world was becoming more digital and repressive, something like Bitcoin was almost inevitable to happen. There's other theories about where it came from, but to me, the most likely one is that it was the work of human rights activists.
And Bitcoin and this e-cash concept, in your mind is the same thing as free speech and human rights. It's all kind of wrapped up in one because it's all about control and freedom. And that's something
I
that
mean,
I go ahead. I think
no,
you observe.
I'll just give you an example. Like Alexei Navalny is an opposition politician in Russia, right? So what's one of the ways that Putin has been going after Navalny? Well, not recently he's poisoned him, he sent him to Siberia, whatever. But
Yeah.
over the years, like that organization was relentlessly attacked at the financial level. Their bank accounts were frozen, right? So if you freeze an activist group or an opposition politician or a newspaper's bank account, you basically disarm them, right? So that's like a tactic of government dictatorship, deplatforming, you could say, right? You deplatform them. Well, guess what? You can't deplatform Bitcoin. So they were raising money in Bitcoin for years. They raised almost 700 Bitcoin over the last 6-7 years. And apparently Bitcoin and cryptocurrency account for 10 to 15% of their monthly income. So in terms of revenue, donation flow. So I think it's been a lifeline for them, and it's been a lifeline for many other groups around the world. And that will just increasingly become the case as more people learn about it.